There is no sound in space. But if there were, this is what you would hear. Nothing. You are 15 billion miles from home. The sun, once the center of your existence, is now just the brightest star in an otherwise indifferent black. Around you, the darkness is so complete, so absolute, that the concept of distance has lost all meaning. There are no landmarks, no reference points, just the slow, silent drift through a region no human eye has ever seen, and no human signal will ever reach again. And then, it happens. A faint shift in the static, a flicker in the instruments. For 47 years, a voice has been traveling across the emptiness to reach you, a whisper from another world. But now, that whisper is changing. The data streams are fragmenting. The patterns you have learned to recognize, the ones that told you this machine was still alive, still thinking, still reporting back from the abyss, they are beginning to break apart. You wait. You always wait. Because that is what you do when you are the last listener on the last antenna, pointed at a ghost. The signal returns. But it is weaker now, slower. The words are there, but the sentences are gone. What you receive is not a message anymore. It is an echo of an echo. The final exhalation of something that has been holding its breath since 1977. And then, for one brief moment, it stops. Not a failure, not interference, just silence. A pause that stretches 1 second too long. And in that pause, you understand something you have been avoiding for years. You are not listening to a machine anymore. You are listening to a memory. A thing that is already gone, but hasn't stopped moving yet. The signal returns. It always returns. But this time, when it comes back, it is not the same. Something has changed out there. Something has crossed a threshold. And as you sit in the control room, surrounded by desert and sky and the weight of half a century, you realize that the conversation you have been having with this distant object is not going to end the way you imagined. It is not going to end with a final word, or a last transmission, or a dramatic farewell. It is going to end the way all long-distance relationships end, when the distance becomes too great. It is going to fade, and the silence that follows will not be the silence of something that has stopped. It will be the silence of something that has simply moved too far away to hear. But that is not the story you have been told about Voyager. That is not the golden record, the greeting to the cosmos, the little spacecraft that could. That is the part they leave out when they talk about humanity's greatest achievement. Because Voyager 1 is not immortal. It is not eternal. It is a machine. And like every machine, it has a clock inside it that is running. The story you know goes like this. In 1977, we launched 2 golden records into space. Greetings in 55 languages, the sound of whales, a map to Earth, a message in a bottle cast into the cosmic ocean, intended for anyone or anything that might find it, millions of years from now. It is perhaps the most hopeful thing humanity has ever done. And it is also, quietly, a kind of lie. Not the record itself. That exists. That is real. The lie is in what we tell ourselves about the spacecraft carrying it. We speak of Voyager as though it is still out there, still sailing, still representing us. We track its position in the news like a cosmic milestone. Voyager 1 enters interstellar space. Voyager 1 is 15 billion miles away. We treat it as a presence, a companion, a proof of life. But Voyager 1 is not a traveler. It is a projectile. It has no destination. It has no purpose beyond the one we gave it decades ago. And that purpose, to return data, is slowly being erased by the very thing we celebrate: distance. Here is what most people do not understand. Voyager 1 is not drifting because it is lost. It is drifting because the laws of motion are indifferent to intention. It left the solar system the way a stone leaves your hand when you throw it. Not because it chose to, not because it is exploring, but because we gave it a push in 1977. and there is nothing out there to stop it. For 47 years, that stone has been reporting back. It has told us about Jupiter's storms and Saturn's rings. It has measured the solar wind and the magnetic fields of worlds we will never touch. It has been, in every real sense, our eyes in a place we cannot go. But here is the truth we avoid. Voyager 1 is dying. Not soon, not eventually, right now. Every year, its power source decays by about 4 watts. That number sounds small until you understand what it means. 4 watts is not just electricity. 4 watts is a camera shutting down, a heater turning off, an instrument going cold. 4 watts is the difference between a voice and a whisper. We have been managing this death for years, carefully, strategically. We turn things off one by one, like a family dimming the lights in a house that is slowly being abandoned. The cameras went first, decades ago, after the last planetary flyby, because there was nothing left to photograph, and every watt mattered. Then the instruments that measured plasma, then the ones that tracked cosmic rays. One by one, the systems have been powered down, not because they failed, but because we needed to keep the core alive just a little longer. And this is where the story shifts. This is where the golden record, the hopeful message in the bottle, becomes something else entirely. Because when we talk about Voyager stopping, we imagine a moment, a final transmission, a last word. But the reality is far stranger and far more lonely. Voyager 1 will not stop talking because it breaks. It will stop talking because it runs out of things to say. The instruments are failing. The power is fading. But the spacecraft itself will keep moving. It will keep moving for billions of years. It will outlast human civilization, outlast the Earth, outlast perhaps the sun itself. It will drift through the galaxy long after every person who ever worked on it is dust. And it will be silent. Not because it chose silence, not because it has nothing to tell us, but because the distance between where it is and where we are will eventually become so vast that the laws of physics themselves forbid the conversation from continuing. That is the part we do not put in the documentaries. That is the part that does not fit the narrative. Voyager 1 is not going to stop. We are going to stop hearing it. And the difference between those two things is the difference between a farewell and a disappearance. Get down. The question is not whether it will stop. The question is what happens to us when it does. The story you know goes like this. In 1977, we launched 2 golden records into space. Greetings in 55 languages. The sound of whales. A map to Earth. A message in a bottle cast into the cosmic ocean, intended for anyone, or anything, that might find it, millions of years from now. It is perhaps the most hopeful thing humanity has ever done. And it is also, quietly, a kind of lie. Not the record itself. That exists. That is real. The lie is in what we tell ourselves about the spacecraft carrying it. We speak of Voyager as though it is still out there, still sailing, still representing us. We track its position in the news like a cosmic milestone. Voyager 1 enters interstellar space. Voyager 1 is 15 billion miles away. We treat it as a presence, a companion, a proof of life. But Voyager 1 is not a traveler. It is a projectile. It has no destination. It has no purpose beyond the one we gave it decades ago. And that purpose, to return data, is slowly being erased by the very thing we celebrate: distance. Here is what most people do not understand. Voyager 1 is not drifting because it is lost. It is drifting because the laws of motion are indifferent to intention. It left the solar system the way a stone leaves your hand when you throw it. Not because it chose to, not because it is exploring, but because we gave it a push in 1977, and there is nothing out there to stop it. For 47 years, that stone has been reporting back. It has told us about Jupiter's storms and Saturn's rings. It has measured the solar wind and the magnetic fields of worlds we will never touch. It has been, in every real sense, our eyes in a place we cannot go. But here is the truth we avoid. Voyager 1 is dying. Not soon, not eventually, right now. Every year its power source decays by about 4 watts. That number sounds small until you understand what it means. 4 watts is not just electricity. 4 watts is a camera shutting down, a heater turning off, an instrument going cold. 4 watts is the difference between a voice and a whisper. We have been managing this death for years, carefully, strategically. We turn things off one by one, like a family dimming the lights in a house that is slowly being abandoned. The cameras went first, decades ago, after the last planetary flyby, because there was nothing left to photograph, and every watt mattered. Then the instruments that measured plasma, then the ones that tracked cosmic rays. One by one, the systems have been powered down, not because they failed, but because we needed to keep the core alive just a little longer. And this is where the story shifts. This is where the golden record, the hopeful message in the bottle, becomes something else entirely. Because when we talk about Voyager stopping, we imagine a moment, a final transmission, a last word. But the reality is far stranger and far more lonely. Voyager 1 will not stop talking because it breaks. It will stop talking because it runs out of things to say. The instruments are failing. The power is fading. But the spacecraft itself will keep moving. It will keep moving for billions of years. It will outlast human civilization, outlast the Earth, outlast perhaps the Sun itself. It will drift through the galaxy long after every person who ever worked on it is dust. And it will be silent. Not because it chose silence, not because it has nothing to tell us, but because the distance between where it is and where we are will eventually become so vast that the laws of physics themselves forbid the conversation from continuing. That is the part we do not put in the documentaries. That is the part that does not fit the narrative. Voyager 1 is not going to stop. We are going to stop hearing it. And the difference between those two things is the difference between a farewell and a disappearance. To understand what is happening to Voyager 1 right now, you have to understand what it is made of. Not the science fiction version, the gleaming ship, the golden record, the poster child of human achievement, but the actual machine, the one that is 15 billion miles away and falling silent. Voyager 1 is, at its core, a nuclear-powered radio. It generates electricity from the heat of decaying plutonium-238. No solar panels. No solar system is big enough for that. Just a slowly cooling lump of radioactive material that has been dying since the day it was born. In 1977, that lump produced about 470 watts, roughly the power of a few light bulbs. Today, it produces about 250. By 2030, it will be below 200. And at some point, probably within the next 5 years, it will cross a threshold that no engineering manual prepared us for. The threshold is not zero. The spacecraft will never reach zero power because zero power means dead systems, frozen fuel lines, a mind that has stopped thinking. But Voyager does not need to reach zero to stop talking. It only needs to reach the point where it cannot keep itself warm. Here is what most people do not consider. Space is cold. Not cold like Antarctica. Not cold like the dark side of the moon. Cold like 3 degrees above absolute zero. Cold like the background temperature of the universe itself. And Voyager 1 was never designed to survive that cold. Every instrument on that spacecraft has a minimum operating temperature. Fall below it, and the electronics do not just fail. They crack. They delaminate. They become permanently, irreversibly broken. To prevent this, Voyager carries heaters, small electric blankets that keep the critical systems just warm enough to function. And those heaters require power. For decades, we have been robbing Peter to pay Paul. When the power drops too low, we turn off a heater to save an instrument. When another instrument fails, we turn off its heater to save something else. It is a slow, calculated triage performed across billions of miles, with signals that take 22 hours to reach the patient and 22 hours to return. But we are running out of things to turn off. The last functioning instruments on Voyager 1 are the magnetometer, the cosmic ray detector, and the plasma wave instrument. These are the eyes and ears of the spacecraft. They are what tell us Voyager is still in contact with the solar wind, still sensing the boundary between our sun's influence and the void beyond. They are, in every real sense, why Voyager still matters. And they are freezing to death. Every year the power budget shrinks. Every year we have to decide which of these instruments will be the next to go. Not which one we want to keep, which one we are willing to lose to keep the others alive just a little longer. The magnetometer will probably be first. It has already exceeded its designed lifespan by 40 years. Then the cosmic ray detector. Then, finally, the plasma wave instrument. The last voice, the last sense, the last proof that Voyager is still aware of where it is. When that instrument goes silent, the spacecraft will not stop. It will continue to transmit a carrier signal, a simple tone, a heartbeat. It will tell us, "I am still here," but it will not tell us anything else. No data, no science, no discoveries from the edge. And then, eventually, the heartbeat will stop too. Not because the spacecraft has died, but because there will not be enough power to keep the transmitter warm enough to function. The fuel lines will freeze. The oscillator will drift off frequency. The antenna, that impossibly precise 3.7-meter dish pointed at Earth with an accuracy finer than a watchmaker's hand, will slowly lose its aim. We will still be listening. The Deep Space Network will still have its antennas pointed at the coordinates where Voyager should be. But the signal will not come. Not because it chose silence, but because the cold reached something deep inside it that could not be replaced. And here is the part that is difficult to sit with. We knew this would happen. We have always known. The plutonium was decaying the moment it was manufactured. The power budget was calculated in the 1970s. The engineers who built Voyager knew exactly how long it would last. They just did not tell us. Or perhaps they did, and we chose not to hear. Because the story of Voyager was never supposed to be a story about endings. It was supposed to be a story about going on forever. And now, in these final years, we are forced to confront the difference between what we wanted the spacecraft to be and what it actually is. A machine. A finite machine. One that is slowly, quietly, running out of time. The silence, when it comes, will not be sudden. It will be slow, layered. Each year the signal will arrive a little later, say a little less, mean a little less. And this is where the escalation becomes something else entirely. Because the problem is not just that Voyager is dying. The problem is where it is dying. 15 billion miles is a number. It is a figure we recite in documentaries and articles, a metric that impresses but does not translate. To understand what 15 billion miles actually means, you have to stop thinking in miles and start thinking in time. Right now, a signal from Voyager 1 takes about 22.5 hours to reach Earth. That means when you ask Voyager a question, when you send a command to turn on an instrument or adjust its orientation, you wait 45 hours for an answer. 2 full days. 2 days of silence between question and response. That delay is not static. It is growing. Every second of every day, Voyager moves approximately 10 miles further away. 10 miles closer to the edge. 10 miles deeper into the region where our sun is just another star. By the time the signal finally stops, that delay will be closer to 24 hours. A full day just for the light to arrive. A full day of waiting to hear nothing. But the distance does more than slow the conversation. It thins it. Radio signals, like all light, spread out as they travel. By the time Voyager's transmission reaches Earth, it is not a beam anymore. It is a faint whisper spread across an area larger than the planet itself. The Deep Space Network catches it with antennas the size of football fields, tuned to frequencies so precise that a single degree of temperature change can throw them off. They are listening for a voice that is, in terms of raw power, 1/10,000,000th of a watt. That is not a signal. That is a ghost, a statistical fluctuation, a pattern so faint that the only way to recognize it is to know exactly what you are looking for. And this is where the geography of silence begins to assert itself. Voyager 1 is not traveling through empty space. It is traveling through the interstellar medium, a thin soup of particles and magnetic fields left over from dying stars and ancient supernovae. For most of its journey, this medium has been irrelevant. But as the spacecraft ages, as its power drops and its systems falter, that thin soup becomes something else. It becomes interference. The plasma wave instrument, one of the last still functioning, has been detecting the vibrations of the interstellar medium for years. It has heard the sun's shock waves ripple past. It has felt the pressure of the galaxy itself pushing against the edges of our solar system. But those detections are becoming harder to isolate. The signal-to-noise ratio is deteriorating. The voice is getting harder to hear over the whisper of the universe. Soon, the instruments will stop detecting anything at all. Not because the interstellar medium has gone silent, but because the spacecraft will no longer have the power to distinguish signal from noise. It will be like a person in a crowded room, trying to hear a single conversation while going deaf. And then there is the drift. Voyager 1 is not stationary. It is not fixed. It is a moving object in a universe of moving objects, and its orientation matters. To communicate with Earth, its antenna must point at us with extraordinary precision. A fraction of a degree off, and the signal misses entirely. For decades, small thrusters have kept it aligned. Tiny puffs of hydrazine, fired occasionally to correct the slow tumble of an object that has been spinning through space since 1977. But those thrusters are aging. The fuel lines that feed them are cold, and the power to fire them comes from the same decaying source that runs everything else. When the power drops too low, we will have to choose. Keep an instrument alive, or keep the antenna pointed at Earth. Keep learning, or keep talking. We will choose the instruments. We always do. Because the science is the point. The data is the reason Voyager exists. But that choice has a consequence. Without thruster corrections, the antenna will drift. Slowly at first, imperceptibly, but over months and years, the signal will begin to fade. Not because the transmitter is weaker, but because the beam is no longer aimed at us. It will be aimed at empty space, at stars we cannot see, at a future that does not include Earth. We will still hear something, for a while. The edges of the beam, the scattered fragments of a transmission meant for someone else. But eventually, even those fragments will stop. And the spacecraft that has been speaking to us since before most of us were born will become just another piece of debris, tumbling silently through the dark. This is the escalation no one prepared us for. Not the death of a machine, but the slow geometric unfolding of separation. Distance compounding distance. Delay compounding delay. The signal thinning until it is indistinguishable from the background radiation of the universe itself. Voyager 1 will not vanish. It will not explode or collapse or fall apart. It will simply, quietly, move beyond the horizon of our ability to hear it. And we will be left here, on this planet, listening to static, knowing that somewhere out there, a light is still shining. We just cannot see it anymore. There is a question that lingers beneath every conversation about Voyager. Unspoken but unavoidable. Why don't we go after it? It is the question we ask when we cannot accept that something we love is slipping away. The same question we ask about dying stars and lost causes, and people who have moved too far away to reach. And like all such questions, it reveals more about us than about the thing we are asking about. We cannot go after Voyager, not because we lack the technology, not because we lack the will, but because the universe is structured in a way that makes certain journeys irreversible. To catch Voyager 1, you would need to launch a spacecraft today that could travel faster than any object humanity has ever built. Faster than the Parker Solar Probe, which skims the sun at 430,000 miles per hour. Faster than New Horizons, which raced past Pluto in a blur of light and data. Faster even than Voyager itself, which is already moving at 38,000 miles per hour relative to the sun. But speed is not the problem. The problem is direction. Voyager 1 is not orbiting something. It is not looping back. It is on a hyperbolic trajectory, a path that curves away from the solar system and never returns. To intercept it, you would not just need to go faster. You would need to go faster in exactly the right direction, at exactly the right time, with a precision that defies the very concept of navigation across billions of miles. And even if you could, even if you launched tomorrow with technology that does not yet exist, you would arrive to find a corpse. Because the Voyager we remember, the Voyager that was alive and talking and returning data, is not the Voyager that exists out there now. It is a fading thing, a diminishing thing. By the time any hypothetical rescue mission reached it, the spacecraft would have been silent for centuries. Its instruments dead, its power source cold, its memory, if it has memory, corrupted by radiation and time. We would not be saving it, we would be recovering it, hauling a relic back to a world that had long since stopped listening for its voice. But there is another reason we do not go, a deeper reason, one that has nothing to do with physics and everything to do with what Voyager has become. Voyager 1 is not just a machine anymore. It is a symbol, a proof of concept, a message to the future that we existed, that we tried, that we once reached beyond ourselves and touched something vast. To retrieve it would be to undo that. To bring it home would be to admit that the only place we can imagine for our artifacts is here, with us, under our control. And that is not what Voyager was built for. The engineers who designed it knew they would never see it again. They knew, on the day it launched, that they were saying goodbye to something they had poured their lives into. They stood on Cape Canaveral and watched it rise into a sky that would swallow it whole. And they did not weep. Or perhaps they did, but they let it go. Because that is what you do with messages. You send them. You do not chase them. So when the signal stops, when the last watt flickers and the final instrument falls silent, there will be no rescue, no mission, no heroic effort to bring it back. There will only be the silence and the knowledge that somewhere out there, in the dark between stars, a small machine is still moving but no longer speaking, still existing but no longer present. We will have lost it not because we could not reach it, but because we finally accepted that it was never ours to keep. It belonged to the universe from the moment it left our atmosphere. We were just lucky enough to listen, for a while, to what it found out there. What happens to Voyager 1 after the signal stops is not a mystery. It is physics. Simple, predictable, indifferent physics. And in that indifference lies something more unsettling than any catastrophe. The spacecraft will continue on its trajectory, not toward anything, not away from anything, just through. It will cross the Oort cloud in about 300 years, a vast shell of icy debris that marks the true boundary of our solar system. It will emerge on the other side, if it emerges at all, and find itself in a region of space that no human mind can truly comprehend. Empty, cold, dark, for a very long time. The nearest star, in the direction Voyager is heading, is called Gliese 445. It is a small red dwarf about 17.6 light-years away. At its current speed, Voyager will take about 40,000 years to get there. But it will not stop when it arrives. It will not orbit or land or investigate. It will simply pass through, a silent ghost in a system that will never know it was there. 40,000 years. To put that number in context, 40,000 years ago, humans were painting animals on cave walls and burying their dead with flowers. There was no agriculture, no writing, no cities. The entire history of civilization, from the first grain harvest to the launch of Voyager itself, fits inside a fraction of that time. and Voyager will have only just reached its first milestone. After Gliese 445, there is nothing. Not for millions of years. Not for hundreds of millions. The spacecraft will drift through the galaxy, through the spaces between stars, through eras of time so vast that continents will rise and fall, species will appear and vanish, and the Earth itself will become unrecognizable. And still, Voyager will move. The golden record, that carefully curated message to the cosmos, will endure most of this. Etched into copper and plated with gold, it is designed to last 1 billion years. The instructions on its cover, a kind of pictographic Rosetta Stone, will remain legible to anyone, or anything, that might find it. But the chances of that happening are so small as to be meaningless. Space is not an ocean. It is not a highway. It is emptiness so profound that two objects can drift for the age of the universe without ever intersecting. The odds that Voyager will ever be found are not zero, but they are close enough that the difference does not matter. So what then is Voyager? If it will never be found, if it will never deliver its message, if it will simply drift forever in the dark, what was the point? That is the question the spacecraft asks us. Not deliberately, not consciously, but by its very existence, by its silence, by its refusal to be anything other than what it is, a thing we made and sent and lost. And the answer, if there is one, is not about Voyager at all. It is about us. We built Voyager because we could, because we had the knowledge and the resources and the audacity to reach beyond our own atmosphere and touch something we would never see again. We sent the golden record not because we expected it to be found, but because the act of sending it said something about who we were. Hopeful, curious, willing to believe that someone, somewhere, might one day listen. That hope was never about the recipients. It was about us. It was a mirror we held up to ourselves, a way of saying, we are the kind of species that sends messages into the dark, even when no one is listening. And now, as the signal fades, as the last watts drain away, and the spacecraft becomes just another piece of debris, we are left with that mirror. We are left with the knowledge that we did this, that we reached, that for a brief moment in the history of the universe, a small machine built by apes on a pale blue dot carried our voice to the edge of everything we knew. Voyager 1 will not stop. It will never stop. It will outlast our cities, our languages, our bones. It will outlast the sun. It will drift through the galaxy long after every trace of its origin has been erased by time. And it will be silent, not because it has nothing to say, but because we are no longer there to hear it. That is what happens when Voyager 1 finally stops. Not an ending, just a separation, a parting of ways between a species that looked up and a machine that kept going. One of them will remain here, on this planet, living out its brief history in the light of a star that will one day die. The other will sail on forever, through a darkness that does not care, carrying a message that may never be read. And both of them, in their own way, will be exactly where they belong.